tonight, we drift into a quieter world, a world where ancient forests whisper secrets, and every word is a gentle bridge to peace. Whether it is a lesson of the heart or a dream from long ago, you don't need to follow every detail. You don't need to hold on to any thought. Just listen. Let the rhythm of the tale wash over you. And as your body grows heavy, let the magic of these stories carry you away into a deep and effortless sleep. The Golden Goose. Once in a quiet village, nestled between fields and forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and 3 sons. The eldest was strong and thought himself clever. The second was shrewd and sharp of tongue. But the youngest, who was small, awkward, and dreamy, was called the simpleton. All mocked him. His brothers laughed. His parents despaired, and the neighbors shook their heads. For whenever he tried to help, he stumbled. Whenever he spoke, others dismissed him, and so, day after day, he was despised, laughed at, and neglected. One morning, the eldest son rose early and said, "Father, today I shall prove my strength. I will go into the forest and cut wood." His mother, proud of him, packed for him a fine meal, a golden brown pancake thick with butter, and a flask of rich red wine to warm him in the cold shadows of the wood. Thus provisioned, he set off with a confident stride. Deep in the forest, he came upon a little old gray man, bent and wrinkled, with kind but weary eyes. The man greeted him. "Good day, good youth. I am hungry and thirsty from my wandering. Pray share a bite of your cake and a sip of your wine." But the eldest scowled and answered sharply, "Share with you? Then what should I eat myself? Be off, old beggar." He turned away, leaving the little man standing sorrowful in the shade of the trees. Yet hardly had he set his axe to a trunk when he struck awry. The blade glanced and bit into his own arm. The wound bled deep. He could not work, but was forced to stagger home in shame. That was the consequence of scorning the little gray man. Soon after, the second son declared that he too would go to the forest. His mother gave him a pancake and a flask, and with proud words sent him off. As with his brother, the little gray man appeared, greeted him, and begged humbly for a morsel and a sip. But the second son curled his lip. Why should I lessen my portion for you? What I give you, I lose myself. Go your way, old fool. And proud of his clever refusal, he strode on, but punishment followed swiftly. As he hewed at a tree, the axe slipped and cut deep into his leg, so that he collapsed and had to be carried home, groaning by the villagers. At last, the simpleton said timidly, "Father, let me go for once into the forest to cut wood." His father laughed bitterly. "Your brothers, who are skilled and strong, have both hurt themselves. You poor fool will fare no better. Stay at home." But the boy pleaded with such gentle insistence that finally the father relented. "Very well. Go and learn by experience. Perhaps pain will teach you what sense cannot." The mother gulped, and for him she baked no fine cake, but only a rough round of dough mixed with water, baked in the ashes until hard. To this she added a flask of sour beer. "There," she said, "that is fitting for such a one as you." Yet the simpleton took it gratefully and set off. In the forest, as before, the little old gray man appeared. His eyes, though weary, seemed to glimmer with hidden light. "Good day, kind youth. I am faint with hunger and thirst. Will you share a piece of your cake and a drink from your flask?" The simpleton bowed his head and said, "I have only a poor cake of ash bread and a flask of sour beer. But if that pleases you, let us sit together and share." So they moved on a mossy stone, and when the boy broke the coarse cake, lo, it became a golden pancake, rich and sweet. And when he raised the flask, it held fragrant wine. They ate and drank, and the little man smiled. "Because you have shown me kindness, where your brothers showed me scorn, I will bestow good fortune upon you. There stands an old tree. Cut it down, and among its roots you will find a treasure." With that, the little man vanished as mist before the sun. The simpleton hastened to the tree, swung his axe with steady strokes, and when the trunk fell, he beheld a marvel. There, nestled among the roots, was a goose with feathers of pure gold, gleaming brighter than the noonday sun. He lifted it gently, astonished, and carried it to a nearby inn, where he planned to spend the night. Now the innkeeper had 3 daughters, curious and covetous. When they saw the golden goose, their hearts burned with desire for a feather each. The eldest, waiting for a moment when the simpleton left the room, crept forward and seized the goose by its wing. But instantly her hand stuck fast, as though glued by unseen force. The second sister, eager not to be outdone, reached to pull her away, but the moment she touched her, she too was held fast. Then came the third, who laughed at their cries. Why should I not have a feather as well? She grasped her sister's skirt, and at once she too was bound. All three stood, clinging helplessly to the goose. In the morning, the simpleton tucked the golden goose under his arm and set out, paying no heed to the three maidens who clung behind, stumbling and wailing. Through field and meadow he walked, and behind him trailed the strange procession. A parson passing by cried out, "Shame upon you, maidens, to chase after a youth in such fashion." He seized the youngest by the hand to drag her away, but the instant he touched her, he too was caught and had to follow. Soon came the sexton, astonished to see the parson in such plight. "Your reverence," he cried, "have you lost your dignity?" He grasped the parson's sleeve and was fastened as well. Then 2 peasants hoeing in the field came running at the parson's call for help. But when they laid hands on the others, they too were bound. So now 7 souls trooped behind the simpleton, and his goose, step for step, through villages and lanes, to the laughter of all who saw. At length they came to a great town, where a king reigned, who had a daughter, fair but solemn. She was famed for her beauty, but also for her sorrowful silence, for none had ever seen her smile. The king proclaimed that whoever could make her laugh should win her hand in marriage. Princes, nobles, and jesters had tried in vain. When the simpleton entered with his goose and his train of 7 clinging figures, the princess beheld the sight and burst into such laughter that it rang like silver bells through the hall. She laughed until she wept and could not stop. And so, by the king's decree, the simpleton had earned her hand. But the king, proud and unwilling to give his daughter to a poor fool, devised new trials. First, he said, "Bring me a man who can drink a whole cellar of wine." The simpleton went into the forest, and there he found a man groaning in thirst. "I have drunk a whole cask, yet my throat burns still." The simpleton led him to the king's cellar, where the man drank and drank until every vat was dry. Still, the king objected. "Now bring me a man who can eat a mountain of bread." Again the simpleton returned to the forest, and there found a starving man, bound by a strap. I have devoured a bakehouse, yet I am empty still. The simpleton brought him to the king's courtyard, where a mountain of bread awaited. In one day he ate it all. Yet again the king sought to delay. Fetch me a ship that can sail alike on land and water. Only then shall you have my daughter. The simpleton sought the forest once more, and the little gray man appeared. I have helped you drink and eat, said he, and now I will help you once more, for you showed me kindness when none else would. Here is the ship that sails both land and sea. The simpleton sailed it proudly to the palace gates. Seeing this, the king could resist no longer. The marriage was held with great rejoicing. And when the king died, the simpleton became king in his stead, ruling wisely with his beloved queen by his side. Thus, the despised fool, through kindness and patience, rose to honor and happiness, and lived long in peace. Snow White, it was the middle of winter, and the snowflakes were falling like feathers from the sky, and a queen sat at her window, working, and her embroidery frame was of ebony. And as she worked, gazing at times out on the snow, she pricked her finger, and there fell from it 3 drops of blood on the snow. And when she saw how bright and what it looked, she said to herself, "Oh, that I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood of the embroidery frame." Not very long after, she had a daughter with a skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. And she was named Snow White. And when she was born, the queen died. After a year had gone by, the king took another wife, a beautiful woman, but proud and overbearing, and she could not bear to be surpassed in beauty by anyone. She had a magic looking glass, and she used to stand before it and look in it and say, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" And the looking glass would answer, "You are fairest of them all." And she was contented, for she knew that the looking glass spoke the truth. Now Snow White was growing prettier and prettier, and when she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as day, far more so than the queen herself. So one day, when the queen went to her mirror and said, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" It answered, "Queen, you are full fair, 'tis true, but Snow White fairer is than you." This gave the queen a great shock, and she became yellow and green with envy, and from that hour her heart turned against Snow White, and she hated her. And envy and pride, like ill weeds, grew in her heart higher every day, until she had no peace, day or night. At last she sent for a huntsman and said, "Take the child out into the woods, so that I may set eyes on her no more. You must put her to death, and bring me her heart for a token." The huntsman consented and led her away. But when he drew his cutlass to pierce Snow White's innocent heart, she began to weep and to say, "Oh, dear huntsman, do not take my life. I will go away into the wild wood and never come home again." And as she was so lovely, the huntsman had pity on her and said, "Away with you, then, poor child." For he thought the wild animals would be sure to devour her, and it was as if a stone had been rolled away from his heart when he spared to put her to death. Just at that moment, a young wild boar came running by, so he caught and killed it. And taking out its heart, he brought it to the queen for a token, and it was salted and cooked, and the wicked woman ate it up, thinking that there was an end of Snow White. Now when the poor child found herself quite alone in the wild woods, she felt full of terror, even of the very leaves on the trees, and she did not know what to do for fright. Then she began to run over the sharp stones and through the thorn bushes, and the wild beasts after her. But they did her no harm. She ran as long as her feet would carry her. And when the evening drew near, she came to a little house, and she went inside to rest. Everything there was very small, but as pretty and clean as possible. There stood the little table, ready laid, and covered with a white cloth, and 7 little plates, and 7 knives, and forks, and drinking cups. By the wall stood 7 little beds side by side, covered with clean white quilts. Snow White, being very hungry and thirsty, ate from each plate a little porridge and bread, and drank out of each little cup a drop of wine, so as not to finish up one portion alone. After that, she felt so tired that she lay down on one of the beds, but it did not seem to suit her. One was too long, another too short, but at last the 7th was quite right. And so she lay down upon it, committed herself to heaven, and fell asleep. When it was quite dark, the masters of the house came home. They were 7 dwarfs, whose occupation was to dig underground among the mountains. When they had lighted their 7 candles, and it was quite light in the little house, they saw that someone must have been in, as everything was not in the same order in which they left it. The first said, "Who has been sitting in my little chair?" The second said, "Who has been eating from my little plate?" The third said, "Who has been taking my little loaf?" The fourth said, "Who has been tasting my porridge?" The fifth said, "Who has been using my little fork?" The sixth said, "Who has been cutting with my little knife?" The seventh said, "Who has been drinking from my little cup?" Then the first one, looking round, saw a hollow in his bed, and cried, "Who has been lying on my bed?" And the others came running and cried, "Someone has been on our beds too." But when the seventh looked at his bed, he saw little Snow White lying there asleep. Then he told the others, who came running up, crying out in their astonishment, and holding up their 7 little candles to throw a light upon Snow White. "Oh goodness, oh gracious," cried they, "what beautiful child is this?" And were so full of joy to see her that they did not wake her, but let her sleep on. And the 7th dwarf slept with his comrades an hour at a time, with each until the night had passed. When it was morning, and Snow White awoke and saw the 7 dwarfs, she was very frightened. But they seemed quite friendly, and asked her what her name was. And she told them. And then they asked how she came to be in their house, and she related to them how her stepmother had wished her to be put to death, and how the huntsman had spared her life, and how she had run the whole day long until at last she had found their little house. Then the dwarfs said, "If you will keep our house for us, and cook, and wash, and make the beds, and sew, and knit, and keep everything tidy and clean, you may stay with us, and you shall lack nothing." "With all my heart," said Snow White. And so she stayed and kept the house in good order. In the morning, the dwarfs went to the mountain to dig for gold. In the evening, they came home, and their supper had to be ready for them. All the day long, the maiden was left alone, and the good little dwarfs warned her, saying, "Beware of your stepmother. She will soon know you are here. Let no one into the house." Now the queen, having eaten Snow White's heart, as she supposed, felt quite sure that now she was the first and fairest, and so she came to her mirror and said, "Looking glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" And the glass answered, "Queen, thou art of beauty rare, but Snow White, living in the glen, with the 7 little men, is 1,000 times more fair." Then she was very angry, for the glass always spoke the truth. and she knew that the huntsman must have deceived her, and that Snow White must still be living. And she thought and thought how she could manage to make an end of her for as long as she was not the fairest in the land. Envy left her no rest. At last, she thought of a plan. She painted her face and dressed herself like an old peddler woman, so that no one would have known her. In this disguise, she went across the 7 mountains until she came to the house of the 7 little dwarfs. And she knocked at the door and cried, "Fine wares to sell, fine wares to sell." Snow White peeped out of the window and cried, "Good day, good woman, what have you to sell?" "Good wares, fine wares," answered she, "laces of all colors." And she held up a piece that was woven of variegated silk. "I need not be afraid of letting in this good woman," thought Snow White, and she unbarred the door and bought the pretty lace. "What a figure you are, child," said the old woman. "Come and let me lace you properly for once." Snow White, suspecting nothing, stood up before her and let her lace her with the new lace. But the old woman laced so quick and tight that it took Snow White's breath away, and she fell down as dead. "Now you have done with being the fairest," said the old woman as she hastened away. Not long after that, towards evening, the 7 dwarfs came home and were terrified to see their dear Snow White lying on the ground without life or motion. They raised her up, and when they saw how tightly she was laced, they cut the lace in 2. Then she began to draw breath, and little by little she returned to life. When the dwarfs heard what had happened, they said, "The old peddler woman was no other than the wicked queen. You must beware of letting anyone in when we are not here." And when the wicked woman got home, she went to her glass and said, "Looking glass against the wall, who is fairest of us all?" And it answered as before, "Queen, thou art of beauty rare, but Snow White, living in the glen with the 7 little men, is 1,000 times more fair." When she heard that she was so struck with surprise that all the blood left her heart, for she knew that Snow White must still be living. "But now," said she, "I will think of something that will be her ruin." And by witchcraft she made a poisoned comb. Then she dressed herself up to look like another different sort of old woman. So she went across the 7 mountains and came to the house of the 7 dwarfs and knocked at the door and cried, "Good wares to sell, good wares to sell." Snow White looked out and said, "Go away, I must not let anybody in." "But you are not forbidden to look," said the old woman, taking out the poisoned comb and holding it up. "It pleased the poor child so much that she was tempted to open the door. And when the bargain was made, the old woman said, "Now for once your hair shall be properly combed." Poor Snow White, thinking no harm, let the old woman do as she would. But no sooner was the comb put in her hair than the poison began to work, and the poor girl fell down senseless. "Now, you paragon of beauty," said the wicked woman, "this is the end of you," and went off. By good luck, it was now near evening, and the 7 little dwarfs came home. When they saw Snow White lying on the ground as dead, they thought directly that it was the stepmother's doing, and looked about, found the poisoned comb, and no sooner had they drawn it out of her hair than Snow White came to herself and related all that had passed. Then they warned her once more to be on her guard, and never again to let anyone in at the door. And the queen went home and stood before the looking-glass and said, "Looking-glass against the wall, who is fairest of us all?" And the looking-glass answered as before, "Queen, thou art of beauty rare, but Snow White, living in the glen, with the 7 little men, is 1,000 times more fair." When she heard the looking-glass speak, thus she trembled and shook with anger. "Snow White shall die," cried she, "though it should cost me my own life." And then she went to a secret, lonely chamber where no one was likely to come, and there she made a poisonous apple. It was beautiful to look upon, being white with red cheeks, so that anyone who should see it must long for it. But whoever ate even a little bit of it must die. When the apple was ready, she painted her face and clothed herself like a peasant woman, and went across the 7 mountains to where the 7 dwarfs lived. And when she knocked at the door, Snow White put her head out of the window and said, "I dare not let anybody in. The 7 dwarfs told me not." "All right," answered the woman. "I can easily get rid of my apples elsewhere. There, I will give you one." "No," answered Snow White. "I dare not take anything." "Are you afraid of poison?" said the woman. "Look here, I will cut the apple in 2 pieces. You shall have the red side. I will have the white one. For the apple was so cunningly made that all the poison was in the rosy half of it. Snow White longed for the beautiful apple, and as she saw the peasant woman eating a piece of it, she could no longer refrain, but stretched out her hand and took the poisoned half. But no sooner had she taken a morsel of it into her mouth than she fell to the earth as dead. And the queen, casting on her a terrible glance, laughed aloud and cried, "As white as snow, as red as blood, as black as ebony, this time the dwarfs will not be able to bring you to life again." And when she went home and asked the looking-glass against the wall, who is fairest of us all?" At last it answered, "You are the fairest now of all." Then her envious heart had peace as much as an envious heart can have. The dwarfs, when they came home in the evening, found Snow White lying on the ground, and there came no breath out of her mouth, and she was dead. They lifted her up, sought if anything poisonous was to be found, cut her laces, combed her hair, washed her with water and wine. But all was of no avail. The poor child was dead, and remained dead. Then they laid her on a bier, and sat all 7 of them round it, and wept and lamented 3 whole days. And then they would have buried her, but that she looked still as if she were living, with her beautiful, blooming cheeks. So they said, "We cannot hide her away in the black ground." And they had made a coffin of clear glass so as to be looked into from all sides, and they laid her in it, and wrote in golden letters upon it her name, and that she was a king's daughter. Then they set the coffin out upon the mountain, and one of them always remained by it to watch. And the birds came too, and mourned for Snow White, first an owl, then a raven, and lastly a dove. Now for a long while Snow White lay in the coffin, and never changed, but looked as if she were asleep. For she was still as white as snow, as red as blood, and her hair was as black as ebony. It happened, however, that one day a king's son rode through the wood, and up to the dwarf's house, which was near it. He saw on the mountain the coffin, and beautiful Snow White within it. And he read what was written in golden letters upon it. Then he said to the dwarfs, "Let me have the coffin, and I will give you whatever you like to ask for it." But the dwarfs told him that they could not part with it for all the gold in the world. But he said, "I beseech you to give it me, for I cannot live without looking upon Snow White. If you consent, I will bring you to great honor and care for you as if you were my brethren." When he so spoke, the good little dwarfs had pity upon him, and gave him the coffin, and the king's son called his servants, and bid them carry it away on their shoulders. Now it happened that as they were going along, they stumbled over a bush, and with the shaking, the bit of poisoned apple flew out of her throat. It was not long before she opened her eyes, threw up the cover of the coffin, and sat up, alive and well. "Oh dear, where am I?" cried she. The king's son answered full of joy, "You are near me." And relating all that had happened, he said, "I would rather have you than anything in the world. Come with me to my father's castle, and you shall be my bride." And Snow White was kind, and went with him, and their wedding was held with pomp and great splendor. But Snow White's wicked stepmother was also bidden to the feast. And when she had dressed herself in beautiful clothes, she went to her looking-glass and said, "Looking-glass upon the wall, who is fairest of us all?" The looking-glass answered, "O Queen, although you are of beauty rare, the young bride is 1,000 times more fair." Then she railed and cursed, and was beside herself with disappointment and anger. First, she thought she would not go to the wedding, but then she felt she should have no peace until she went and saw the bride. And when she saw her, she knew her for Snow White, and could not stir from the place for anger and terror. For they had ready red-hot iron shoes, in which she had to dance until she fell down dead. Hansel and Gretel, near the edge of a vast and shadow-haunted forest, there dwelt a poor woodcutter, his stern wife, and 2 small children. The boy was called Hansel, the girl Gretel. Their cottage was meager, their cupboard nearly bare, and in a season of famine that swept across the land, even the daily crust of bread could no longer be won. Hunger gnawed at their bellies by day and haunted their dreams by night. One evening, when the father tossed sleepless upon his straw bed, he groaned aloud, "What shall become of us? Our children cry for food, yet our hands are empty. There is no bread, not even a scrap of crust left in the bin." His wife turned her cold eyes toward him and whispered, harsh as the crack of dry wood, "I will tell you what must be done. At dawn, we shall lead the children deep into the forest, into the thickest part where no path returns. We shall give each a small piece of bread, then abandon them by the fire. They will never find their way home, and thus we shall be rid of them." The man shuddered. "No, wife, my heart cannot endure such cruelty. To leave them among wolves and wild beasts, better we perish together than feed the forest with our children's bones." But the woman mocked him. "Then sharpen 4 stakes and carve our coffins, for soon we shall all starve. You weak fool, will you let sentiment drag us all into the grave?" So relentless was her tongue that the man's spirit faltered, and he gave way, though grief weighed on him like an axe of stone. Stones in the moonlight, Hansel and Gretel, lying wakeful with empty stomachs, overheard every word. Gretel wept bitterly. "Brother, we are lost, doomed to die in the forest." But Hansel put his arm about her and whispered with quiet faith, "Do not fear, little sister. I will think of something. God will not forsake us." When the house was sunk in slumber, Hansel rose, donned his coat, and crept outside. The moon shone clear, and the pale stones scattered before the hut glittered like silver coins spilled from heaven's purse. He bent low, gathered his pockets full, and returned to bed. "Rest now, Gretel. Sleep in peace. Tomorrow you shall see what I mean." The first journey into the forest. At the break of day, the woman woke them roughly. "Rise, you idlers. We go to the forest to cut wood." She gave each a thin slice of bread. "That is for your dinner. Do not eat it sooner, for you will have no more." Hansel slipped his into his pocket, already heavy with stones. On the path, he often lagged behind, turning his head to look back at the cottage. "What do you gaze at, Hansel?" asked the father. "I am looking at my white kitten upon the roof, who waves me farewell." "Simpleton," cried the wife. "That is no cat, only the morning sun flashing on the chimney." But Hansel, each time he turned, dropped one of his shining stones upon the ground. At last they reached the heart of the forest. A fire was kindled, and the mother said, "Sit here, children, warm yourselves, and rest. We go deeper to hew wood. When we are ready, we shall return." Hansel and Gretel sat by the crackling blaze, ate their dry bread, and listened to what they thought was the father chopping wood. Yet it was only the wind tossing a dead branch. At length, weary with hunger, they slept. Night fell cold and deep. Gretel woke first and sobbed, "How shall we ever find our way home?" But Hansel comforted her. "Wait for the moon, sister. Then you shall see." And when the round moon rose, its light struck upon the white stones, gleaming like a silver path through the darkness. Hand in hand, the children followed the trail, walking the whole night, until at dawn, the familiar cottage stood before them. Their father's heart leapt with joy, though the woman scolded harshly. The second betrayal, yet famine still reigned. Soon the cruel wife whispered once more, "We have only half a loaf left. After that, the end. Again, we must cast them off, this time farther deeper, where no return is possible." The man groaned. Better to share our last morsel with the children. But she overbore him with bitter words, and he yielded. Hansel and Gretel, sleepless and hollow-eyed, overheard again. Hansel slipped from bed to fetch stones, but the door had been locked. Still, he whispered, "Do not despair, Gretel. God will help us." Next morning, each child received a piece of bread smaller than before. On the way, Hansel crumbled his portion into tiny bits, letting them fall upon the path. When asked what he stared at, he answered, "A little dove sits on the roof to bid me farewell." The woman snarled, "That is no dove, but the morning sun." They were led deeper than ever into a part of the forest unknown. Another fire was kindled. Again the parents departed. Again the children slept. At night, Hansel urged, "Wait, sister, till the moon rises. Then we shall see the crumbs I have scattered." But when the moon lifted her pale face, there was nothing. Every crumb had been eaten by the birds of the wood. Lost, they wandered through night and day, gnawing wild berries, stumbling with weakness. On the third day, faint with hunger, they sank beneath a tree, and there might have died had not a snow-white bird alighted, singing sweetly. When they followed, it led them to a strange little house, the house of bread. The walls were baked of bread, the roof shingled with cake, the windows glazed with clear sugar. Hansel cried, "Look, Gretel, a banquet sent from heaven. I shall eat a piece of the roof, and you may nibble the window pane." But as they ate, a thin voice sang from within, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who is gnawing at my house?" Hansel answered quickly, "Only the wind, only the wind." They went on eating until the door opened, and an ancient woman appeared leaning on a crutch. Her eyes were red as burning coals. Her smile stretched wide and strange, yet her voice was honeyed. "Dear children, come inside. You must be cold and hungry. Here is milk, and pancakes, and apples, and nuts aplenty." Within they found a table laden and soft white beds to rest in. Thinking themselves in paradise, they lay down and slept. But the old woman was a witch who built her sugared house to lure children. Her eyes, though weak, could smell the nearness of human flesh like a wolf. That night, she laughed to herself, "Now I have them. They shall not escape." The witch's snare. At dawn, she seized Hansel, dragged him to a small cage, and locked the iron bars. However, he cried and pleaded, it was no use. Then she shook Grethel awake. Up, lazy bones. Fetch water and cook something good for your brother. He shall be fattened, and when he is plump enough, I shall eat him. Grethel wept bitterly, but fear forced her to obey. From then on, Hansel received rich meals, while Grethel lived on scraps and shells. Each morning, the witch croaked, "Hansel, put out your finger, that I may feel if you are fat yet." But Hansel held out a little bone he had found. Her failing eyes deceived her, and she wondered why he never grew plumper. After 4 weeks, her patience broke. "Fat or lean, tomorrow you die," she cried. Fire and deliverance. Early next morning, she ordered Grethel to heat the oven. "We shall bake first, then feast. Creep in, girl, and see if it is hot enough." But Grethel, sensing her wicked plan, feigned ignorance. "I do not know how to look inside." "Stupid goose," hissed the witch. "The hole is wide enough. See, I could creep in myself." And she thrust her head forward. Quick as lightning, Grethel pushed her hard and slammed the door shut, dropping the iron bolt. The witch howled and shrieked, but the flames consumed her, and her cries died away in smoke. Grethel ran to Hansel, unlocked his cage, and shouted, "We are free! The witch is dead." Hansel sprang out like a bird from its prison. They embraced, wept, laughed, and danced about. Searching the house, they found chests of pearls, jewels, and gold. Hansel stuffed his pockets, and Grethel filled her apron. The journey home, they set out, but soon came to a wide stream. No bridge, no stepping stones, no boat was there. Then a white duck swam toward them. Grethel called, "Duck, duck, so mild and good, carry us over the water and wood. No bridge, no stone, no wooden beam, bear us across on your snowy stream." The duck obeyed. Hansel crossed first, then Grethel. Onward they went, until the woods grew familiar. At last their father's cottage stood before them. The man who had not known a single hour of peace since leaving them clasped them with tears of joy. The cruel wife was dead. Hansel poured handfuls of jewels upon the floor, and Grethel spilled pearls from her apron until the room gleamed. So all care ended, and they lived together in joy and plenty. My tale is told. Run, little mouse, run. And whoever can catch it may weave from its fur a cap both warm and fine. Snow White and Rose Red. There once lived a poor widow in a lonely little cottage at the edge of a vast forest. Before her door stretched a modest garden, and in its center grew 2 rose trees, one bearing blossoms as white as fallen snow, the other as red as a maiden's lips. This widow had 2 daughters who were like those rose trees in spirit and in beauty. The elder, calm and gentle, was called Snow White. The younger, lively and merry, was named Rose Red. The children, though different in temper, were alike in goodness, diligence, and cheer. Rose Red loved to wander through meadows and along forest paths, chasing butterflies, braiding daisies into garlands, and laughing at the song of larks. Snow White, by contrast, was content to remain close to her mother, helping with the humblest tasks of the household, spinning wool by the hearth, or reading softly from an old book whose letters glowed like mysteries in the firelight. Yet never did their differences make them quarrel, for their hearts were twined as closely as the 2 rose trees in the garden. Whenever they set out together, they clasped hands so tightly that no power could part them. "We will never leave each other," Snow White would whisper, and Rose Red would answer, "Never so long as we live." Their mother, hearing this, would smile and say, "What one has must belong to the other." The forest knew them well. They gathered berries without fear, for no wild creature ever harmed them. The hare hopped boldly to nibble cabbage leaves from their palms. The gentle roe deer grazed beside them. Even the proud stag bounded past in play, while the little birds perched above and sang, as though the sisters were their chosen audience. If the sun set, while they lingered too long, they lay down together on a mossy bed, slept soundly under the open sky, and awoke with the dawn unharmed. Once, indeed, when morning came, they saw a fair child clothed in shining white garments sitting near their mossy couch. He looked kindly upon them, but spoke not, and vanished into the trees. When they turned about, they beheld with trembling that they had slumbered on the very edge of a precipice. One step more in the dark, and they would have fallen. Their mother told them it was surely an angel who guards the innocent. At home, their little cottage shone with care. In summer, Rose Red adorned her mother's bed with wreaths of flowers, always placing one white and one red rose among them. In winter, Snow White polished the copper kettle until it gleamed like gold, lit the fire, and warmed the room against the snow. Evenings were happiest of all. Their mother read aloud from her great book while the girls span flax with nimble fingers. At their feet rested a lamb gentle and white, while a dove perched behind them with its head tucked beneath its wing. One such evening, while snowflakes drifted outside, there came a heavy knock at the door. "Quick, rose red," said the mother. "Open it. Must be a traveler seeking shelter." Rose red hastened to draw the bolt, but instead of a weary man, there thrust in a great shaggy head, black as midnight. Startled, bleated the dove, fluttered, and Snow White darted behind the bed. Yet the bear spoke in a deep, rough voice. "Do not fear. I mean you no harm. I am half frozen, and only seek warmth by your fire." "Poor creature," said the mother, "gently come in and lie by the hearth, but take care not to singe your coat." Then she called her daughters forth. Slowly, Snow White and Rose Red crept nearer, and the lamb and dove grew calm again. They fetched a broom and brushed the snow from the bear's thick fur. Soon he stretched out before the fire, growling in contentment. Before long, the children were laughing with him, tugging at his ears, rolling upon his back, and even tapping him with hazel twigs. When their play grew too rough, he cried in mock reproach, "Snowy white, rosy red, will you strike your lover dead?" The sisters giggled until their sides ached. At night, the bear slept upon the hearth, and in the morning, the children unbolted the door that he might trot back into the forest. From then on, he returned each evening, and the doors were never fastened until their black-furred friend had entered. But when spring spread its green mantle over the earth, the bear rose one morning and said gravely to Snow White, "Now I must go and shall not return until winter." "Where go you, dear bear?" asked she. "I must guard my treasure from the wicked dwarfs," he answered. "While the ground is frozen, they cannot pierce it. But now, when the earth is soft, they creep out to steal, and what they seize is rarely seen again." Sorrowfully, the sisters unbarred the door. As he pressed through the latch, caught upon his fur, and tore it. And for an instant, Snow White thought she glimpsed gleaming gold beneath. But before she could be sure, the bear hurried away into the forest shadows. Not long after, the widow sent her children to fetch firewood. There they found a tree split upon the ground, and struggling near it, a strange little man, a dwarf, with a beard white as snow and long as a yard. His beard was caught fast in a crevice of the trunk, and he leapt and raged like a fox in a snare. With eyes red as embers, he shrieked, "Why stand you gaping? Will you not help me?" The girls tried to pull the beard free, but it was held too tightly. "I will fetch help," said Rose Red. "Foolish goose," screeched the dwarf. But Snow White, quick-witted, drew her scissors and snipped off the end of the beard. Freed the dwarf, seized a sack of gold hidden among the roots, snarling, barbarous children, to spoil my noble beard, and vanished without thanks. Twice more they met him once by the brook, where his beard was tangled in a fishing line, and again upon the heath, where an eagle had seized him in its talons. Each time the sisters saved him. Each time he reviled them bitterly. And each time he carried away a bag of treasure. At last, one evening, as the sun sank and the children crossed the heath, they spied the dwarf again. He had emptied his jewels upon the ground, and the stones glittered like stars. Seeing the girls, he screamed in rage, but before he could curse them further, there came a low growl. Out of the forest bounded the black bear. The dwarf shrieked in terror, "Spare me, noble bear. Take my treasures, or better yet, eat these two plump maidens." But the bear paid him no heed, struck him dead with a single blow, and then turned kindly to the trembling sisters. "Snow White, Rose Red," said he, "fear not. It is I, your friend." And even as he spoke, the bearskin slipped away, and in his place stood a handsome prince, clothed all in gold. "That wicked dwarf bewitched me," he said, "and stole my treasure. Only at his death could the spell be broken." Soon after, Snow White became his bride, and Rose Red married his brother. The treasure was shared between them, and the old mother dwelt in peace at their side. Before her window stood the two rose trees, blossoming each year with flowers of white and red, as fair and faithful as the sisters themselves. The wolf and the 7 young kids, once in a quiet valley, where the grass grew tall and the brook sang through mossy stones, there lived an old goat. She was a tender mother, and her heart clung to her 7 little ones as tightly as ivy clings to a wall. Each was different. One nimble one, timid one, merry one, bold. But to her, they were all treasures, as precious as pearls in a crown. One morning, as the sun poured gold through the branches, the mother goat gathered her children round her. "My dear little ones," said she today, "I must wander into the deep wood to fetch herbs and sweet leaves for our supper. While I am gone, take heed. The wolf roams near that dark trickster who devours without pity. If he should creep into this house, he would eat you whole skin, bones, and heart. He is a master of deceit. But you may always know him by two signs. His voice is rough and hoarse, and his paws are black as soot. Fear not. Mother, bleated the little goats in chorus. We shall watch and guard the door. No wolf shall trick us. Then the mother kissed each tender head, bleated her farewell, and trotted away with an easy mind. But scarcely had her shadow faded among the trees when a heavy knock came at the cottage door. A gruff voice cried out, "Open, open, my dear children. Your mother has returned and brought each of you a gift." At once, the kids pricked their ears, for the voice was deep and hoarse. "We will not open the door," cried they. "You are not our mother. Her voice is gentle and sweet, while yours is harsh. You must be the wolf." And they stayed hidden inside. The wolf gnashed his teeth in anger, yet he was cunning. He hurried to the village and bought a lump of chalk, which he chewed to make his voice soft. Then he came again and knocked. "Open the door, my dear children." He called, his tone now smooth as cream. "Your mother is come home and has brought each of you something from the wood." But as he pressed his paws against the window, the little ones saw his great black claws. "We will not open," they cried again. "Our mother's paws are not black like yours. You are the wolf, furious." The wolf ran to the baker. "Smear my paws with dough," said he, "for they are hurt." And the baker, though doubtful, obeyed. Then he ran to the miller. "Dust my paws white with flour." The miller hesitated, for he guessed some evil was afoot. "I will not," said he. But the wolf bared his fangs and snarled, "Do it, or I shall swallow you whole." Trembling, the miller obeyed. And that shows how fear bends men to wickedness. So the wolf returned once more and knocked for the third time. "Open, dear children. Your mother has come home and brings you each a gift." "Show us your paws," cried the kids, still cautious. He lifted them to the window, and lo, they were white as snow. Believing the lie, the little ones unlatched the door. In he sprang, the dreadful wolf. The kids shrieked and scattered like leaves in a storm. One darted under the table, another leapt into the bed, a third hid in the oven, A fourth dashed into the kitchen. A fifth scrambled into the cupboard. The sixth crept under the sink, and the seventh squeezed into the tall clock case. But the wolf was swift and merciless. One by one, he dragged them out, swallowed them whole, and laughed with a belly full of wriggling prey. Only the youngest in the clock case escaped his jaws. Satisfied, the wolf waddled into the meadow, his stomach heavy with his feast. Beneath a broad tree, he lay down, and soon he was snoring so loudly that the branches quivered. Not long after, the mother goat returned. But what a sight awaited her! The door swung wide, the chairs overturned, the dishes shattered, the bed torn apart. She called each child by name, but no answer came, until at last a faint little voice replied from the clock case, "Here I am, dear mother." She drew out her youngest, who told her all with trembling words how the wolf had tricked them, how he had swallowed the others whole. The mother wept bitter tears, her heart pierced with grief. She wandered with her last child into the meadow, and there she beheld the wolf snoring beneath the tree. His belly bulged and stirred as though something inside still moved. Oh, heaven, thought she. Can it be my poor little ones live yet within that beast? Quickly, she sent the youngest back for scissors, needle, and thread. With steady hands, she cut open the wolf's great belly. Scarcely had she snipped when the head of one little kid popped out alive and gasping. Then another and another, until all six leapt forth unharmed, for the wolf had gulped them whole in his greed. How they danced and kissed their mother, filling the meadow with cries of joy. "Now," said the mother, her eyes flashing, "fetch me heavy stones." And they did so in haste. One by one, they filled the wolf's belly with the hard rocks, and she stitched him up so neatly that he never stirred. At length, the wolf awoke. Thirsty, he dragged himself to the brook. But the stones clattered inside him, striking bone against bone. What is this I feel within me, knocking hard against my bones? Once were kids that leapt so sprightly, now are stones as heavy stones. He stooped to drink, but the weight dragged him down. With a crash and a splash, he fell into the water and was drowned. When the 7 little goats saw it, they ran to their mother, shouting, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" And hand in hand, they danced about her in the sunlight, their laughter ringing through the valley as the old goat's heart rested at last in peace. Cinderella. There was once a wealthy man who lived in a fair house at the edge of a deep wood. His wife, who had long been gentle and good, lay upon her bed, stricken with mortal sickness. When she felt her hour of departure was near, she called to her only daughter and bade her draw close. The girl, still but a child, pressed her small hands into her mother's pale ones. With faint breath, the woman whispered, "Dearest child, remain pious and good, and the Almighty will never forsake you. From heaven above, I shall watch, and when you weep, I will bend my ear. When you pray, I will kneel beside you. Be steadfast, and you shall not walk alone." Having spoken these words, she closed her eyes, and death came softly to her. The maiden wept bitterly, day after day, and went each morning to her mother's grave beneath a humble stone. There she knelt, watering the earth with tears, and her heart grew meek and faithful. When winter came, a blanket of white snow covered the mound, as if heaven itself had clothed her mother's rest in purity. When spring returned and melted the snow, the father took himself another wife. This woman brought with her 2 daughters. Fair they seemed to look upon, with bright hair and clear skin, but their hearts were foul and cruel. From the moment they entered the house, they cast evil eyes upon the man's daughter. "Is this dull creature to sit by us?" they sneered. "Shall she eat at our table who earns nothing? Out upon her, she shall be our kitchen maid." At once they stripped her of her gowns of soft cloth, gave her a ragged gray kirtle, and thrust heavy wooden shoes upon her feet. Laughing, they mocked her. "See the proud princess, adorned for her throne of ashes." They sent her into the kitchen, where from dawn till dark she labored, drawing water till her arms ached, hauling firewood, stirring pots, washing, scrubbing floors, until her knees were raw to torment her. Further, the sisters strewed peas and lentils among the ashes, and commanded her to pick them out grain by grain. At night, when her body trembled with weariness, she had no bed but the cold hearth, no pillow but the cinders. And because she was always smudged with soot and dust, they named her Cinderella, the Maiden of Ashes. Now one day, her father prepared to travel to the fair. He asked his stepdaughters what gifts they would have. "Fine clothes," cried one. "Pearls and jewels," demanded the other. At last, he turned to Cinderella and said gently, "And you, child, "What shall I bring you?" She answered, "Father, bring me the first twig that brushes against your hat upon the road." So he went and bought silks, pearls, and glittering gems for his stepdaughters. On his way home through a green lane, a hazel twig struck his hat. He broke it off and brought it to Cinderella. She thanked him, and going to her mother's grave, she planted it there. She wept so hard that her tears watered the twig, and from it grew a fine tree. 3 times a day she visited it, weeping and praying. Always a white bird came and perched among the branches. Whatever she desired, the bird cast down to her. Not long after, the king proclaimed a festival to last 3 days, that his son might find a bride. All the maidens of the land were invited. The stepsisters were beside themselves with joy. They called for Cinderella comb, our hairbrush, our shoes, fasten our buckles. We must be fair for the feast. When Cinderella heard of the dance, her heart ached sorely. She too longed to go and begged her stepmother leave to attend. But the woman scoffed. "What, you in your soot and rags, you who have no dress, no shoes, and no grace for dancing? The feast is not for such as you." Yet when the girl pleaded, still her stepmother said slyly, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes. If you can pick them out within 2 hours, you may come with us." Cinderella slipped into the garden and called softly, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." Then 2 white doves flew in at the window, followed by turtle doves, and at last a cloud of little birds from under heaven. They perched among the ashes, nodding their heads, and began to peck, pick, peck, pick, peck, until the dish was filled with clean lentils. In less than an hour, all was done, and they flew away. Joyfully, Cinderella brought the dish, thinking now she might go, but her stepmother sneered. "No, child, you have no proper dress, and you cannot dance. You would be mocked." And when Cinderella wept, she scattered 2 more dishes of lentils in the ashes, thinking, "This time she will fail." But again the maiden called the birds, and again they came fluttering and pecked until both dishes were filled before half an hour had passed. Still, the cruel woman refused. "All is of no use. You shall not go. We would be shamed, Then she hastened away with her 2 proud daughters. Alone in the house, Cinderella ran to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." At once, the bird cast down a gown of shimmering silver and gold, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver thread. Hastily, she dressed and went to the festival. None knew her, for she looked like a princess from a far-off land. The king's son took her by the hand, danced with her alone, and would not let another partner near. When evening came, she slipped away. The prince followed, but she sprang into the pigeon house. The father summoned, hewed it down with axe and hatchet, but inside was no one. For Cinderella had already fled to her hazel tree, laid a